Greetings, my friends. You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here. And now we are bringing you the full story of what happened. We are giving you all the evidence based only on the secret testimony of the miserable souls who survived this terrifying ordeal. The stories, the poems. My friends, we cannot keep this a secret any longer. Can your hearts stand the shocking facts of the true story of Howard Phillips Lovecraft? Well, now that I have your attention, my name is Christian Henry Tobler, and I welcome you to our celebration of the life and literary legacy of one Howard Phillips Lovecraft, a name which has become synonymous with horror fiction. It is a renown that has steadily increased during the 8 decades since his untimely passing. This remarkable writer was born in and lived most of his life here in this city. Today's presentation is entitled, in honor of one of his most famous quotes, and one which appears on his gravestone, "I am Providence." Howard Phillips Lovecraft was born at 454 Angel Street, Providence, on the 20th of August in 1890. From a sheltered childhood plagued by profound loss, plus a mysterious breakdown in 1908 which necessitated he abandon his schooling, there emerged a man of vast creativity and spectacular imagination, inventing for his stories an implacable cosmos, populated by a complex pantheon of otherworldly beings who overtook our Earth at the dawning of humankind as monstrous interstellar usurpers. His attendance at Hope High School was sporadic, but young Lovecraft was soaking up much information through independent reading. Having devoted his teen years to studying astronomy, delighting in adventurous speculations, if not the accompanying mathematical disciplines, he authored astute articles published in local papers and expressed his life's observations through a profusion of poetry. During his 20s, H.P. Lovecraft began earnestly writing prose, which ranged from unfinished fragments and short stories to what could be termed novellas. Despite a prolific literary output, which was in addition to his maintaining a bewildering flow of correspondence, he seemed to demonstrate meager talent for self-promotion and faint business acumen when applied to his own career. Yet, he seemed quite capable of dispensing sound advice to burgeoning writers who consulted him. The last several years of his life were filled with further hardship. In 1932, his beloved aunt, Mrs. Lillian Clark, died, and the following year he moved to quarters at 66 College Street with his other aunt, Annie Gamwell. In 1936, he was struck by the suicide of Robert E. Howard, one of his closest correspondents and the creator of Conan the Barbarian. By this time, the illness which would cause his own death, cancer of the intestines, had already progressed to the point where little could be done for him. He was admitted to Jane Brown Memorial Hospital on March the 10th of 1937. 5 days later, on the Ides of March, a horror story of dignity in the face of near poverty and unremitting pain was finished. When H.P. Lovecraft died, 5 months short of his 47th birthday, he must have considered himself a failure as a writer, assuming his work would quickly fade into oblivion and be forgotten along with him. If so, he was wrong, for he left us with a collection of some of the most nightmarish, gripping tales of supernatural suspense, which continue to influence writers and filmmakers. While some of his output is marred by a racism strident even for his time, H.P. Lovecraft has become established as an important figure in American and world literature, likened to Edgar Allan Poe, whom he revered, as a master weaver of arcane and eldritch tales. His disturbing themes have provided inspiration for numerous movie and television screenplays, most of them not very good. Lovecraft began his highly regarded essay entitled Supernatural Horror in Literature with the following statement: "The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. What frightened H.P. Lovecraft also frightens us. He awakened in us a compelling lure of the darkly mysterious and horrific. The shade of H.P. Lovecraft lingers, indeed, and it's not confined to the murky recesses of a graveyard. Rather, it moves unrelenting through the pages of his chilling tales we so enjoy reading." And now I would like to announce the founder of this tribute, which first started in 1987, for those who might have attended way back when, Mr. Carl Johnson and his twin brother Keith, who have a joint reading for us.
If it wasn't for this man, I wouldn't be where I am now. Neither of us would be. No. Yes. March 15th, 1987, and I expected maybe 10, 12 people with paperback books by H.P. Lovecraft. We had 100 people, so it really does vary. And as a rule, it can't be sunny. The temperature has to drop 15 degrees and a breeze, and the clouds come in. So that's...
it should rain some, too.
Yeah, that's keeping with our tradition. Yeah. Okay. This is in Shadow Cast. I wrote this when I was beginning my Lovecraft studies. I was back in 1987, and I was over here by the obelisk, the Phillips Monument, and I noticed that at the hour of 3, which is why we start this tribute services at 3, the shadow was falling right on H.P. Lovecraft's headstone. So, and it was March, so that was fitting, and that's why it's called In Shadow Cast. In shadow cast by obelisk, bearing cross and crown, lies the caller of Cthulhu, an author of renown. Those nightmare tales he wove for us perpetuate his fame, so here we gather to behold that stone which bears his name.
It wasn't while he walked this earth he knew such grand acclaim. The efforts of a worthy few blew embers into flame. We owe a debt to HPLL, his losses are our gain, and after we depart this sight, his essence shall remain.
His hold on life relinquished, he sleeps as we all must. A valiant soul extinguished, consigned to mold and dust. That soul lives on through treasures that he left for you and me. A wealth of lore bequeathed to us is Lovecraft's legacy.
We plumb his strange imaginings, some see what they imply. He dared embrace a simple truth that fainter hearts deny. The vilest of monstrosities are those we often find, lurking through dark labyrinths within the human mind.
I stand upon the steps he climbed to gaze at distant stars. A sense of wonder filled his thoughts, as wonder now fills ours. A smile brightened his countenance as thoughtfully he said, "In such an unknown universe, there may be much to dread."
Shed not a tear at Howard's grave, for he is ever home. His spirit is not wandering. What need for it to roam? No strife, no strain disturbs his rest, not now nor ever will. In shadow cast by obelisk, our never-met friend lies still.
The following is based in places word for word on a letter Lovecraft wrote to Donald Wandrei on November 24th, 1927. The first 3 and last 5 paragraphs were added by J. Chapman Miskey. The remainder is almost verbatim Lovecraft. In the letter, Lovecraft reveals that his, quote, dreams occasionally approach the fantastical in character, though falling somewhat short of coherence. Many of his stories were inspired by dreams. This is The Thing in the Moonlight. Morgan is not a literary man. In fact, he cannot speak English with any degree of coherency. This is what makes me wonder about the words he wrote, though others have laughed. He was alone the evening it happened. Suddenly, an unconquerable urge to write came over him, and taking pen in hand, he wrote the following. My name is Howard Phillips. I live at 66 College Street in Providence, Rhode Island. On November 24th, 1927, for I know not even what the year may be now, I fell asleep and dreamed, since when I have been unable to awaken. My dream began in a dank reed-choked marsh that lay under a gray autumn sky, with a rugged cliff of lichen-crusted stone rising to the north. Impelled by some obscure quest, I ascended a rift or cleft in this beetling precipice, noting as I did so the black mouths of many fearsome burrows extending from both walls into the depths of the stony plateau. At several points, the passage was roofed over by the choking of the upper parts of the narrow fissure, these places being exceedingly dark and forbidding in the perception of such burrows as may have existed there. In one such dark place, I felt a consciousness of a single accession of fright, as if some subtle and bodiless emanation from the abyss were engulfing my spirit. But the blackness was too great for me to perceive the source of my alarm. At length, I emerged upon a tableland of moss-grown rock and scanty soil, lit by a faint moonlight which had replaced the expiring orb of day. Casting my eyes about, I beheld no living object, but was sensible of a very peculiar stirring far below me amongst the whispering rushes of the pestilential swamp I had lately quitted. After walking some distance, I encountered the rusty tracks of a street railway and the worm-eaten poles which still held the limp and sagging trolley wire. Following this line, I came upon a yellow vestibuled car numbered 1852 of a plain double-trucked type common from 1900 to 1910. It was untenanted, but evidently ready to start, the trolley being on the wire and the air brake now and then throbbing beneath the floor. I boarded it and looked vainly about for the light switch, noting as I did so the absence of the controller handle, which thus implied the brief absence of the motorman. Then I sat down in one of the cross seats of the vehicle. Presently I heard a swishing in the sparse grass toward the left and saw the dark forms of two men looming up in the moonlight. They had the regulation caps of a railway company, and I could not doubt that they were the conductor and the motorman. Then one of them sniffed with singular sharpness and raised his face to howl to the moon. The other dropped on all fours to run toward the car. I leaped up at once and raced madly out of that car and across endless leagues of plateau till exhaustion forced me to stop. Doing this not because the conductor had dropped on all fours, but because the face of the motorman was a mere white cone tapering to one blood-red tentacle. I was aware that I only dreamed, but the very awareness was not pleasant. Since that fearful night, I have prayed only for awakening. It has not come. Instead, I have found myself an inhabitant of this terrible dream world. That first night gave way to dawn, and I wandered aimlessly over the lonely swamplands. When night came, I still wandered, hoping for awakening. But suddenly I parted the weeds and saw before me the ancient railway car, and to one side a cone-faced thing lifted its head and in the streaming moonlight howled strangely. It has been the same each day. Night takes me always to that place of horror. I have tried not moving with the coming of nightfall, but I must walk in my slumber, for always I awaken with the thing of dread howling before me in the pale moonlight, and I turn and flee madly. God, when will I awaken? This is what Morgan wrote. I would go to 66 College Street in Providence, but I fear for what I might find there. And now I should like to summon forth from the abyss our friend Mr. Guy Beatty with his offering of the conclusion of Pickman's model.
Thank you, Christian. Hello, everyone. This is probably one of my favorite endings to one of his short stories, because it kind of wraps everything up and leaves little to the imagination. But without any further ado, the end of Pickman's model. There was something very disturbing about the nauseous sketches and half-finished monstrosities that leered around from every side of the room. And when Pickman suddenly unveiled a huge canvas on the side away from the light, I could not for my life keep back a loud scream the second I had admitted that night. It echoed and echoed through the dim vaultings of that ancient and nitrous cellar, and I had to choke back a flood of reaction that threatened to burst out as hysterical laughter. Merciful Creator! Elliot, but I don't know how much was real and how much was feverish fancy. It doesn't seem to me that Earth can hold a dream like that. It was a colossal and nameless blasphemy with glaring red eyes, and it held in its bony claws a thing that had been a man, gnawing at the head as a child nibbles at a stick of candy. Its position was kind of a crouch, as one looked and one felt at any moment it might drop its present prey and seek a more juicier morsel. But damn it all, it wasn't even the fiendish subject that made such an immortal fountainhead of all panic, nor the half-hoofed feet, none of these, though any one of them may have driven an excitable man to madness. It was the technique, Elliot. The cursed, impious, and unnatural technique. As I am a living being, I never elsewhere saw the breath of life so fused into a canvas. The monster was there. It glared and gnawed and glared, and I knew that only a suspension of nature's laws could ever let a man paint a thing like that without a model, without some glimpse of the netherworld, which no mortal unsold to the fiend have ever had. Pinned with a thumbtack to a vacant part of the canvas was a piece of paper, now badly curled up, and probably, I thought, a photograph from which Pickman meant to paint a background as hideous as the nightmare as was to enhance. I reached out to uncurl and look at it, when suddenly I saw Pickman start as if shot. Oh, good, it's in order. He had been listening with peculiar intensity ever since my shocked scream had waked unaccustomed echoes in the dark cellar, and now he seemed struck with a fright which, though not comparable to my own, had it in more of the physical than of the spiritual. He drew a revolver and motioned me to silence, then stepped out into the main cellar, then closed the door behind him. I think I was paralyzed for an instant. Imitating Pickman's listening, I fancied I heard a faint scurrying sound somewhere, and a series of squeals or bleats in a direction I couldn't determine. I thought of huge rats and shuddered. Then there came a subdued sort of clatter, which somehow set me all in goose flesh, a furtive groping kind of clatter which I can't attempt to convey what I mean in words. It was like heavy wood falling on stone or brick. Wood on brick? What did that make me think of? It came again louder. There was a vibration as if the wood had fallen farther than it had fallen before. After following a sharp grating noise, a shouted gibberish from Pickman and the deafening discharge of all 6 chambers the revolver fired spectacularly as a lion tamer might fire in the air for effect. A muffled squeal or squawk and a thud. Then more wood and brick grating and a pause, and the opening of a door, at which I confess I started violently. Pickman reappeared with a smoking weapon, cursing the bloated rats that infested the ancient well. The deuce knows what they eat, Thurber, he grinned. For those archaic tunnels touch graveyard and witch den and sea coast, but whatever it is, they may have run up short, for they were devilishly anxious to get out. Your yelling stirred them up, a fancy, I guess. Better be cautious in these old places. Our rodent friends are the one drawback, though. I sometimes think they're a positive asset by way of atmosphere and color. Well, Elliot, that was the end of the night's adventure. Pickman had promised to show me the place, and heaven knows where he had done it. He led me out of that tangle of alleys in another direction. It seems, for when we sighted a lamppost, we were in half-familiar street with monotonous rows of mingled tenements, blocks, and old houses. Charter Street, it turned out to be, but I was too flustered to notice just where we hit it. We were too late for the elevated and walked back downtown through Hanover Street. I remember the walk. We switched from Tremont up, Beacon, and Pickman left me at the corner of Joy, which I turned off. I never spoke to him again. But why did I drop him? Well, don't be impatient. Wait till I ring for coffee. We've had enough of the other stuff. But I need something. No, there wasn't the paintings I saw in that place, though I swore there were enough to get him ostracized in 9/10 of the homes and clubs of Boston. I guess you wouldn't wonder why I have to steer clear of subways and cellars. It was something I found in my coat the next morning. You know, the curled up paper tacked to that frightful canvas in the cellar. The thing I thought was a photograph of some scene he meant to use as a background for that monster. That last scare had come to me a while I was reaching to uncurl it, and it seems I had vacantly crumpled it up into my pocket. But here's the coffee. Take it black, Elliot, if you're wise. Yes, that paper was the reason I dropped Pickman. Richard Upton Pickman, the greatest artist I'd ever known and the foulest being that ever leapt the bounds of life into the pits of myth and madness. Elliot, old Reed was right. He wasn't strictly human. Either he was born in strange shadow or he'd found a way to unlock the forbidden gate. It's all the same now, for he's gone back to the fabulous darkness he loved to haunt. Here, let's have the chandelier going. Don't ask me to explain or even conjecture what I burned. Don't ask me what lay behind that mole-like scrambling Pickman was so keen to pass off as rats. There are secrets, you know. which may have come down from old Salem times, and Cotton Mather tells even stranger things. You know how damned lifelike Pickman's paintings were? How we all wondered where he got those faces? Well, that paper wasn't a photograph of any background after all. What it showed was simply the monstrous being he was painting on that awful canvas. It was the model he was using. In his background, there was merely the wall of the cellar in minute detail. But by God, Elliot, it was a photograph from life. Thank you, guys. And thank you all for showing up. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You, sir.
Carl, would you want to do something else right now?
Will you answer?
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Beatty. Excellent. This is my own poem, or my ditty. Will you answer? An obsession. Howard, gone these many years, knew he not your lurking fears? Once you strode this ancient hill, does your essence move here still? Your pen told of worlds forbidden, horrors from dimensions hidden. Poe and Bierce and Dunsany were the lamps that lit your way. As the master you're now hailed, sadly, you believe you'd failed. Shallow critics soon forget, you've transcended all regret. Meager means bleak in starkness, you, the whisperer in darkness. Madness like a jealous brother, struck your father, then your mother. Solitude came with dear cost, love you found, and love you lost. Self-contained within your city, you disdain our latent pity. Come what storm Fortuna hurled, still your flag of hope unfurled. Poet soul and lord of fright, should we meet in dreams' free flight, carry me through sable skies, set me where your body lies. Free to you from life's brief toil, sheltered by that cooling soil. If I call with verse and rhyme, will you answer one last time?
And now H.P. Lovecraft's What the Moon Brings. I hate the moon. I am afraid of it. For when it shines on certain scenes familiar and loved, it sometimes makes them unfamiliar and hideous. It was in the spectral summer when the moon shone down on the old garden where I wandered, the spectral summer of narcotic flowers and humid seas of foliage that bring wild and many-colored dreams. And as I walked by the shallow crystal stream, I saw unwanted ripples tipped with yellow light, as if those placid waters were drawn on in resistless currents to strange oceans that are not in the world. Silent and sparkling, bright and baleful, those moon-cursed waters hurried I knew not whither, whilst from the embowered banks white lotus blossoms fluttered one by one in the opiate night wind and dropped despairingly into the stream, swirling away horribly under the arched carven bridge and staring back with a sinister resignation of calm, dead faces. And as I ran along the shore, crushing sleeping flowers with heedless feet, and maddened ever by the fear of unknown things and the lure of the dead faces, I saw that the garden had no end under that moon. For where by day the walls were, there stretched now only new vistas of trees and paths, flowers and shrubs, stone idols and pagodas, and bendings of the yellow-litten stream past grassy banks and under grotesque bridges of marble. And the lips of the dead lotus faces whispered sadly, and bade me follow, nor did I cease my steps till the stream became a river, and joined amidst marshes of swaying reeds and beaches of gleaming sand the shore of a vast and nameless sea. Upon that sea the hateful moon shone, and over its unvocal waves weird perfumes breeded, and I saw therein the lotus faces vanish. I longed for nets that I might capture them, and learn from them the secrets which the moon had brought upon the night. But when that moon went over to the west, and the still tide ebbed from the sullen shore, I saw in that light old spires that the waves almost covered, and white columns gay with festoons of green seaweed. And knowing that to this sunken place all the dead had come, I trembled and did not wish again to speak with the lotus faces. When I saw afar out in the sea a black condor descend from the sky to seek rest on a vast reef, I would have fain questioned him and asked him of those whom I had known when they were alive. This I would have asked him had he not been so far away, but he was very far, and could not be seen at all when he drew nigh that gigantic reef. So I watched the tide go out under that sinking moon, and saw gleaming the spires, the towers, and the roofs of that dead, dripping city. And as I watched, my nostrils tried to close against the perfume-conquering stench of the world's dead. For truly, in this unplaced and forgotten spot, had all the flesh of the churchyards gathered for puffy sea worms to gnaw and glut upon. Over these horrors the evil moon now hung very low. But the puffy worms of the sea need no worm to feed by. And as I watched the ripples that told of the writhing of the worms beneath, I felt a new chill from afar out whither the condor had flown, as if my flesh had caught a horror before my eyes had seen it. Nor had my flesh trembled without cause, for when I raised my eyes, I saw that the waters had ebbed very low, showing much of the vast reef whose rim I had seen before. And when I saw that the reef was but the black basalt crown of a shocking icon whose monstrous forehead now shone in the dim moonlight and whose vile hooves must paw the hellish ooze miles below, I shrieked and shrieked, lest the hidden face rise above the waters, and lest the hidden eyes look at me after the slinking away of that leering and treacherous yellow moon. And to escape this relentless thing, I plunged gladly and unhesitatingly into the stinking shallows, where amidst weedy walls and sunken streets, fat sea worms feast upon the world's dead.
That will be repeated at your aperitif before dinner.
Yes.
We all gather.
Uplifting is definitely the rule of the day.
Well, you see where his mind went.
If you have something, then I'll keep it back.
Okay, I'll have 2 short songs.
All right.
Okay. Should I do the funny one or the serious, morbid one first?
They're both uplifting.
Yeah, they're Lovecraft, so what can they be? Yeah. I'll start with the toast to Brown Jenkin. The character of Brown Jenkin is a grotesque, which is familiar, that appears in the H.P. Lovecraft story Dreams in the Witch House. So the more you know about Lovecraft literature, the more you'll enjoy these. Brown Jenkin is a loathsome creature, a spawn of conjure, a disgrace. With one distinctive loathsome feature, this rat who bears a human face. Brown Jenkin, with your tail reptilious and your fang-strewn leering grin, one look at you can make me bilious. Your existence is a sin. You cannot be God's creation, neither rodent nor a man. Filthy little aberration, leaving handprints where you ran. When I contemplate your being, I can only stare aghast. I scarce believe what I am seeing as I glimpse you scurrying past. Brown Jenkin, while I gaze upon you, all my reasoning I forsake. Who can know just where you'll crawl to? A trail of rat turds in your wake. Still, Brown Jenkin, we salute you for the nightmares you inspire, though most would prefer to shoot you and toss your carcass on the fire. Okay. Now, patriotic in a Lovecraft sense, Cthulhu Rising. When the firmament breaks and the blazing stars are set right, then we all must awake to a new dawn darker than night. In black caverns below he abideth there in deathless sleep, grim harbinger of woe, he reclaimeth the earth to seize and to keep. Cthulhu unfurls his wings as his squid head breaches the waves. Hearken, great Dagon sings, and the boldest of kings become slaves. All men tremble with fear when his nightmare form blots out the sun. For our race doom draweth near, and the reign of man now is undone. We're all cheerful now.
Mr. Keith, are you ready?
Come forth. For all are welcome at the table of Cthulhu. have you a song?
Yes.
Did you want to introduce it?
Well, we can introduce it.
Yes, this is another little ditty by a group that had some limited following, cult-like following for a time in the 1970s, Pearls Before Swine, and this is appropriate for this month and this season and this weather. It's called I Shall Not Care.
You all may find the lyrics rather appropriate. I think this is W. When I am dead, and over me bright April shakes out her rain-drenched hair, though you should lean above me broken-hearted, I shall not care. I shall not care. Words that were not said, songs that were not sung, tears that were not shed, deeds that were not done. I was not, I was, I am not, I do not care. Words that were not said, songs that were not sung, tears that were not shed, deeds that were not done. I shall have peace, as leafy trees are peaceful, when rain bends down the bough. And I shall be more silent and cold-hearted than you are now, than you are now.
Now, this is something we haven't done at one of the tributes in a long time. Well, of course, we haven't done a tribute in 3 years, so everything seems like a long time now. But this is a collection of H.P. Lovecraft quotes. Some of them more sardonic than others. The world is indeed comic, but the joke is on mankind. From even the greatest of horrors, irony is seldom absent. Never explain anything. I wonder what that one is in reference to. Pleasure to me is wonder, the unexplained, the unexpected, the thing that is hidden, and the changeless thing that lurks behind superficial respectability. Almost nobody dances sober unless they happen to be insane. The chief delineation between mythology and theology lies in one's degree of acceptance. That is, to what level either is embraced. Math is a unified constant. It can be applied to both lines of reasoning, the metaphysical and the scientific. I see no evil, I hear no evil. I do speak some evil, but can't claim to be especially fluent. Fools habitually speak in terms of absolutes. Contrary to what you may assume, I am not a pessimist, but an indifferentist. That is to say, I don't make the mistake of thinking that the cosmos gives a damn one way or the other about special wants and ultimate welfare of mosquitoes, rats, lice, dogs, men, horses, pterodactyls, trees, fungi, dodos, or other forms of biological energy. There are not many persons who know what wonders are open to them in the stories and visions of their youth. For when as children we learn and dream, we think but half-formed thoughts, and when as adults we try to remember, we are dulled and prosaic with the prism of life. But some of us awake in the night with strange phantasms of enchanted hills and gardens, of fountains that sing in the sun, of golden cliffs overhanging murmuring seas, of plains that stretch down to sleeping cities of bronze and stone, and of shadowy companions of heroes that ride caparisoned horses along the edges of thick forests. Excuse me. And then we know that we have looked back through the ivory gates into the world of wonder, which was ours before we were wise and unhappy. I am not very proud of being human. In fact, I distinctly dislike the species. I can readily conceive of beings vastly superior in every respect. To be bitter is to attribute intent and personality to the formless, infinite, unchanging, and unchangeable void. We drift on a chartless, restless sea. Let us sing when we can and forget the rest. I know always that I am an outsider, a stranger in this century, and among those who are still men. It is good to be a cynic. It is better to be a contented cat. And it is best not to exist at all. And finally, ultimate horror often paralyzes memory in a merciful way.
Have you something?
Should I do another?
Let me do another now.
All right.
I don't think I have anything else, but I'll pull through my paper.
All right, while Carl is pawing through his copious notes,
Nope, I've read it all.
I will give you an offering, kind of sticking with the theme of uplifting. This is very uplifting. You're going to find this very, very uplifting. If I can find my papers before they blow away on me. Is it threatening? Wow, it's really windy.
Blow into the Seacon River. Yeah. Be lost.
It's got to be.
Born adrift from this.
I'm looking for a garden.
Take these things out. Got the cats.
Ah, we are. All right, this is very uplifting indeed. So be prepared to be cheered up. This is a poem by Lovecraft, A Garden. There's an ancient garden that I see sometimes in dreams, where the very Maytime sunlight plays and glows with spectral gleams, where the gaudy tinted blossoms seem to wither into gray, and the crumbling walls and pillars waken thoughts of yesterday. There are vines in nooks and crannies, and there's moss about the pool, and the tangled weedy thicket chokes the arbor dark and cool. In the silent sunken pathways springs an herbage sparse and spare, where the musty scent of dead things dulls the fragrance of the air. There is not a living creature in the lonely space around, and the hedge-encompassed quiet never echoes to a sound. As I walk and wait and listen, I will often seek to find when it was I knew that garden in an age long left behind. I will oft conjure a vision of a day that is no more. As I gaze upon the gray scenes I feel I knew before, then a sadness settles o'er me, and a tremor seems to start, for I know the flowers are shriveled hopes. The garden is my heart. Anything else, Carl? Or?
Cats. I don't think Keith said you had to spare.
You want to do the cats?
Yeah, I'd just like to say a few words about Lovecraft's character. Obviously, none of us ever knew him personally. Those who did say he was quite the gentleman. Now, Howard Phillips Lovecraft, of course, has somewhat of a reputation for being a misanthrope, someone who shuns society. Well, he may have been an introvert in many ways, but he also had a very pleasant singing voice and would occasionally sing in public. He had a recording, a disc made in a record shop of him singing In the Shade of the Old Apple Tree, and I guess his fans have never forgiven him for destroying that, because he said he sounded like a dying rooster. Although those who knew him say he had a very, very pleasant singing voice. He also has a reputation for being a bigot, attributed to much of his writings, especially in his younger years. Of course, he recanted much of that in his later years. But those who knew him personally testify, Howard, you're full of hot air. If you saw a person, including a minority person, being abused, you'd be the first to run to that person's aid.
So there were two sides.
Yes, indeed.
And we keep in mind that H.P. Lovecraft was middle-aged when he was 23 years of age. So he had just enough time to turn some of those views around. Well, we have despair. Did you want?
I can do that. Do you have that copy or do I have it here? Oh, you have it. Thank you. I'll take it.
We kept it on papers.
Well, it's sticking with the cheerful theme of the day. And you can tell this is going to be one of the happier poems. This is Despair by H.P. Lovecraft. O'er the midnight moorlands crying, through the cypress forest sighing, in the night wind madly flying, hellish forms with streaming hair, in the barren branches creaking, by the stagnant swamp pool speaking, past the shore cliffs ever shrieking, damned demons of despair. Once I think I half remember, ere the gray skies of November quenched my youth's aspiring ember, lived there such a thing as bliss. Skies that now are dark were beaming, bold in azure, splendid seeming, till I learned it was all dreaming, deadly drowsiness of dis. But the stream of time swift flowing brings the torment of half knowing, dimly rushing, blindly going, past the never-trodden lea. And the voyager repining sees the wicked death fires shining, hears the wicked petrels whining as he helpless drifts to sea. Evil wings in ether beating, vultures at the spirit eating, things unseen forever fleeting, black against the leering sky. Ghastly shades of bygone gladness, clawing fiends of future sadness, mingle in a cloud of madness, ever on the soul to lie. Thus the living lone and sobbing, in the throes of anguish throbbing, with the loathsome furies robbing night and noon of peace and rest. But beyond the groans and grating of abhorrent life is waiting, sweet oblivion culminating all the years of fruitless quest. You know, I never really noticed about this poem how very much it has a lot of the cadence of Poe's Raven to it.
It has that 7-syllabic beat.
Yeah.
I was just noticing that myself. Bump, ba, bump, ba, bump, ba, bump.
And an equally cheerful subject matter too, of course.
Pleasant, very pleasant.
All right, does anyone want to hear one more reading?
Yes, one more before it snows.
All right, I'm gonna
one more.
All right, I'm gonna let our studio audience choose what we're going to have. We can either hear the poem "The Cats," or if my voice holds out, I can read the conclusion of "The Hound."
Hound.
All right. Let me find it.
Yeah. Like Don Knotts in The Ghost of Mr. Chicken, where those papers blow away at the beginning of his speech.
Yeah, well, I'm on the verge of that. There we go. This, by the way, was one of the very famous very first things that I ever read at a Lovecraft tribute, which I think probably would have been in the early 1990s. I think this was my first offering, so it kind of comes full circle.
1990, yeah.
An excerpt from The Hound. The baying was loud that evening, and in the morning I read of a nameless deed in the vilest quarter of the city. The rabble were in terror, for upon an evil tenement had fallen a red death beyond the foulest previous crime of the neighborhood. In a squalid thieves' den, an entire family had been torn to shreds by an unknown thing which left no trace, and those around had heard all night a faint, deep, insistent note as of a gigantic hound. So at last I stood again in the unwholesome churchyard where a pale winter moon cast hideous shadows and leafless trees drooped sullenly to meet the withered frosty grass and cracking slabs. And the ivied church pointed a jeering finger at the unfriendly sky, and the night wind howled maniacally from over frozen swamps and frigid seas. The baying was very faint now, and it ceased altogether as I approached the ancient grave I had once violated, and frightened away an abnormally large horde of bats which had been hovering curiously around it. I know not why I went thither unless to pray or gibber out insane pleas and apologies to the calm white thing that lay within. But whatever my reason, I attacked the half-frozen sod with a desperation partly mine and partly that of a dominating will outside myself. Excavation was much easier than I had expected, though at one point I encountered a queer interruption. When a lean vulture darted down out of the sky and pecked frantically at the grave earth until I killed him with a blow of my spade. Finally, I reached the rotting oblong box and removed the damp, nitrous cover. This is the last rational act I ever performed. For crouched within that centuried coffin, embraced by a close-packed nightmare retinue of huge, sinewy sleeping bats, was the bony thing my friend and I had robbed. Not clean and placid as we had seen it then, but covered with caked blood and shreds of alien flesh and hair, and leering sentiently at me with phosphorescent sockets and sharply ensanguined fangs, yawning twistedly in mockery of my inevitable doom. And when it gave from one of those grinning jaws a deep, sardonic bay as of some gigantic hound, and I saw that it held in its gory, filthy claw the lost and fateful amulet of green jade, I merely screamed and ran away idiotically, my screams soon devolving into peals of hysterical laughter. Madness rides the star wind, claws and teeth sharpened on centuries of corpses, dripping death astride a bacchanal of bats from night-black ruins of buried temples of Belial. Now, as the baying of that dead, fleshless monstrosity grow louder and louder, and the stealthy whirring and flapping of those accursed web wings circles closer and closer, I shall seek with my revolver the oblivion which is my only refuge from the unnamed and unnameable.
I think that's a good conclusion.
Yes, thank you everyone for our readers. Yes, thank you, my friend. Well done.
That was some classic stuff right there.
Thank you.
Oh, I love the Hound. I forgot that.
We were a small but attentive crowd today, so thank you everyone for coming. I would promise balmier weather for next year, but why bother? This is the right atmosphere for such proceedings.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Well, till 5 o'clock you can. Then they close the gates.
Don't let that stop you.
Yeah, I've got cards for everybody, just so you can keep in touch.